Our guest today has come from some of the TV's biggest shows, including The X Factor and Top of the Pops, and done a whole range of other brilliant things. But now Kate Thornton has turned drinking wine with her celeb mates like Denise into a successful podcast. But most importantly, she's a former loose woman. Now, before we get into the chat, Kate, actually, I want to take a look at some of your best bits.
Hello and welcome to Loose Women.
You'll never guess who's live on the phone to Loose Women. It's George Michael. Will you come on and physically chat to us next time so I can touch you?
You know, it depends. Can you do outside broadcast?
Yeah, we will. I'm going to shock you, ladies. I don't do tea.
Don't you?
No. It makes my tongue itch.
I think that's an embarrassing illness.
I get the doctor.
We couldn't let your birthday go uncelebrated. We know how
God,
much
you
you
good
love a
feature.
certain iconic person. Come in, George!
Happy birthday.
Oh, my, do you know what? We're watching that, Kate, and that last bit when they pretended that George Michael was coming on to set. That was so mean. It was mean.
It was so mean, especially because the first time he called the show, and I remain his biggest fan. He left his number for me to call him, and I refused to take it in case I ever had a few too many and decided to call him up. So my number was then passed to him. So I was in contact with George at this point, and I thought, oh no, they've not bothered him and got him in for the show, have they? I really thought it was for George Michael.
Yeah. What was it like looking back at some of those best bits? Because I feel as though a lot of the podcast, you know, White Wine, Question Time, there's a lot of elements which sort of crosses over with what you were doing on Loose.
Totally. It's the power of brilliant conversation with people who are interesting and interested. And that's Loose Women in a nutshell. And I loved my time on the show and have remained firm friends with so many of the women that I met on the show and have had them all on the podcast. Den's been on the podcast. She's going to be doing the live shows that are coming up later in the year in the West End. Colleen's been on, Nadia's been on, Kay's been on. So as much as my time on the show ended, my friendships with those women never did. And they came at a time in my life where I was at a massive crossroads, becoming a single parent for the first time. And I really believe, looking back now, that I was meant to spend that time with those women because they just gave me muscles to kind of launch into the next phase of my life. And I have such mad affection for Loose Women. Always have, always will.
We always say, Kate, that the morning meetings here are like therapy anyway.
Yeah.
But you yourself, you actually had proper therapy as opposed to us all saying stuff.
Yeah, well, no, I'd had therapy, and I talked about it a lot on the show. When I was a teenager, I had therapy because I had anorexia and bulimia. And then while I was on the show, I started again, I had therapy because I was trying to come to terms with the fact that I was becoming a single mum. And then after I left the show, I decided that the therapy had been so helpful to me that I went back to school at the same time Ben started school, and I qualified. I went back to college for 2 years, just 1 day a week, and then sort of doing it from home. So I qualified to become a counsellor.
Oh, wow.
Amazing. Do you think, Kate, that because, as you know, we do talk about everything on the show, and I felt that from the time you joined to the time you left, you'd really, really opened up about your life in front of the camera as well as behind the scenes with us. Do you think that's what led to you believing that therapy was so good, because talking is so good?
No, because I really always believed that, Cole, to be honest. I think what Loose Women gave me was a chance to go onto a show where I could talk off script. So up until that point, I've been sort of doing, hello, good evening, welcome, it's the judges, phone now, vote now. And that stuff, you're there, you're just an on-screen narrator, really. You're getting the show from A to B. Whereas on Loose, I was quite nervous before I took the job on, thinking, can I give so much of myself? Then, of course, I got on air and never stopped.
Get no choice.
But, you know, I think a lot of people maybe don't know, Kate, is that you started in this, you know, as
you were the youngest ever editor of Smash Hits magazine when you were 21. And Charlene said something, and it made me so proud.
When I was at uni, when I was studying journalism, you were like the poster girl, Kate, because of all the amazing things that you'd achieved so young. And we were sort of told, you know, look, Kate Thornton's done this. She was the youngest editor ever of Smash Hits magazine. If Kate can do this with all that talent, imagine what you could do if you worked harder. So you know, when I was at uni, we basically studied your path to Smash Hits.
Oh, how lovely is that? Do you know what, though? I mean, yes, I was the youngest editor of Smash Hits, but the thing I'm most proud of, I was the first woman in the chair, which is outrageous when you consider the time it had been going and the fact that it spoke to predominantly young women. And I say young women, I mean teenage girls. So that's the thing that I was most proud of. But Charlene, that is so lovely to hear, because I think, like all of us, I have massive imposter syndrome. So all I see when I look back on my time is the things that I got wrong, didn't do as well as I hoped I could. So yeah, you end up defining yourself by your flaws. And actually, it's really nice, you know, just having the intro on the show today. I was like, who's that? She sounds interesting. Oh, yeah.
You're a big deal. You're a big deal, Kate. And I don't ever want you to forget that. And the fact that you've now got this podcast that's going to end up on
going
stage.
live into the West End.
Amazing.
I know, yes, I know. Can you believe that? And do you know what? And this is another thing, sort of backtracking to the golf scenario that you talked about earlier in the show. When I first launched this podcast, I was told, not in a sort of pessimistic way, just in a sort of brutally honest way, you can try to do this, but there are no podcasts for women out there. And historically, women don't listen to podcasts. And I was like, but how can they listen to podcasts if there aren't any out there for them? Well, who's listening to podcasts? Like, sport, comedy, faith. So, you know, the company that I work with were like, look, we're really up for trying this, but it is a bit of an anomaly. You will be the sort of, you know, I mean, people like Fern Cotton had done her brilliant podcast, but that was all around well-being, just a female-led conversation. And I was like, well, look, if it fails, it fails. But
And
I'm
guess
happy
what?
to fail.
It's award-winning.
It didn't. It's award-winning and shocking. When you give women some power, it's amazing what they can achieve. And absolutely amazing what they can achieve. And we're all so proud of you, Kate. Thanks so much for talking to us this afternoon.
Oh, it's been so lovely to be back.
you.
And
See you.
lovely having me, Lee.